Hello everyone, it's Jeff here again, back with another video. It's a very busy video day here, I think, for me. I wanted to make this kind of like a response video to one that I saw last week by Jeff Party, who talked about listening habits and the fact that he felt that he wasn't bonding with records the way he used to while younger. And he used the new Paul McCartney album as an example, and earlier McCartney albums too that came out before this new one, and as how it didn't really make an impression. He automatically bought them because he's a McCartney fan, but didn't feel like any kind of connection with the records themselves or the music. Didn't really leave as big of an impression as, say, way earlier albums did. And I watched that video, and I was nodding my head a lot as I watched it, because I felt a lot of the same things that Jeff did in terms of, you know, having a more of like a personal connection with music. And actually for me, getting back into vinyl, even though it's been like 7 years, almost 8 years now, putting a record on and listening to it really has helped me actually kind of regain my connection with music. Not to the same extent as it did when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, the limitations there were primarily financial, because I just didn't have the money to get all of the records I wanted. So anytime I did buy an album, it had to have, you know, at least 3 or 4 songs that I knew were good on them to justify the purchase. There was no blind buying of albums back then for me. And once the ones that I did get, or the ones that I did buy, or whatever I got like for Christmas, as a Christmas present or birthday, whatever, that would almost kind of be the direction I went in for like that year of listening, because I would play those records over and over and over. So, and as I got into the cassettes, because I had a Walkman, so I brought it to school with me, even though we really weren't supposed to. I kept it in my bag, and I would sneak out the headphones during like homeroom and just kind of put them on as low as I could so no one could see, and I would play cassettes. That was how I really I basically memorized the Led Zeppelin catalog. I had all their albums on cassette. So back then, you know, finances was key, I would say, and the fact that the technology was limited. You know, you had record albums, and then you had cassettes as your two choices. I mean, I'm not talking about like 8-track or reel-to-reel like that either. It was either records or cassettes back then, until the later 80s when CDs came along. So there was no iPods, there were no smartphones that you can play music off of. There were no array of devices, whatever you want to choose, to make your music collection portable. So you were kind of stuck. So having that tight of a restriction on the technology and the format, I think also kind of forced you, or at least it kind of forced me, to focus in on what you had and listen to it in more of an active way. It wasn't just always background music, or, you know, things that you just had on, you know. I'm just lost my train of thought. Damn it, I hate that when it happens when I'm on camera. Um, these days, well, time. That was the other thing. You know, I wasn't working a swing shift job back then. I didn't have a family to support back then. I didn't have all these bills to pay back then. I had plenty of time to occupy myself with music and comics and other things too. But this discussion's about music. Um, so the ability to just lay down or sit down wherever and put something on, you know, I'm talking about around the house, not anywhere, but was a lot greater than it is now. So, like, take today, for example. I'm off today. I'm off work. Everybody's gone. I already made one video that I had already uploaded. I'm making this video, which I probably won't upload till tomorrow. And I'm probably going to make a third video after this one as a spin zone. So it's like the limited amount of time that I have, and of course I don't have any chores around the house to do. I don't have to fix anything. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to cook dinner till later. So it's like, okay, I've got this block of time. Let me do this with it. So it wasn't so restricted like it was, you know, back then. It wasn't so restricted. All those things play a factor into it, I think. As far as developing a personal connection with the music, it's a lot harder to do now, even with older albums, so-called classic albums that I've bought just because I wanted the physical copy in my collection. It just seems like music isn't that ritualistic anymore the way it used to be. Not counting the resurgence of vinyl as a format. I think that's partially restored slightly more critical listening because you can't take a turntable with you wherever you go. You know, you have your setup at home. You know, you've got your shelving and storage, everything right there. It's basically an immovable thing, your music collection. You know, now granted, all of these albums, you know, that I'm sitting around could all fit on my iPod if I had, you know, digital copies of them. No problem. And wherever I go, I could plug it into my car. I could plug it into standalone speakers. I could plug it into a stereo. And I could basically take my music, all of my music, with me whenever I wanted to. And I think just having that much ability to choose kind of stops you because it takes away the focus a little bit. You know, it takes away the big, like the grand album release. Like everybody's been going nuts over the new McCartney release, almost to the point of there being some backlash. I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't buy the album. I really don't have any interest in doing that. But, you know, to a lot of people, Paul McCartney is still one of the biggest artists out there. So I get it. But as far as being able to sit down and focus on one album is a lot more difficult because I just don't have the time. You know? And if I did take all my music with me on my iPod, I'm driving while I'm listening. Or say I could be at work and I could put it on, but I'm doing something. You know, I'm not just sitting there focusing on it. Listening critically to it. And I think that's taken away from the hobby a little bit. But The resurgence of vinyl as a format, I think, has helped dial that back some for those who are into vinyl. Speaking of just the physical format of vinyl records, let me show you this here. This is my rolling record crate, as I've talked about and shown before. Before I made this video, I counted how many records I have here. I've got 105 albums in this case and this stack on top. 105 that I've bought over, say, the past year. Now, this is not counting all the stuff that I've listened to and that I show in my regular videos. You know, I usually show, 5 to 10 albums per spin zone, more or less. So there's a ton of music sitting here that hasn't even been played yet. So unless I really become infatuated with an album, which does happen and has happened a couple times over the past year, where I just want to play it again and again and again because I'm just obsessed with it. Usually, once I play something from here, it usually only gets spun once or maybe twice before I move on to the next thing. So, it's just impossible to take everything in all at the same time. I can only listen to one of these at a time. And each album is, 30 to 45 minutes long of music. Some of these are double albums. No triples. I got rid of all the triples. But, it's a big time commitment. So, that's also curbed my desire to want to get more, because I have to work this down. I have to work this down by at least half before I really want to start buying big stacks of albums again like I have been. All those things kind of converge, at least it does to me, in making music slightly more disposable, I think, maybe, than it used to be. My life is pretty settled now. I'm married to the love of my life. The kids are already in high school. My life is pretty well set. God forbid anything should happen. I don't want to jinx myself here, but it's a lot different when you are in your teens and 20s and maybe even into your 30s, where a song could really move you or grab you or, mean something more on an emotional level. And I know it happened to me a lot when I was in my teens and 20s, where I would hear a song on the radio, hear an album, whatever, and those songs just really moved me a lot more. So I'm wondering if age isn't also a factor besides, time and finances and all the other things that I mentioned. So that's probably a factor too, now that I'm sitting here thinking of it, making this video. I'm not saying that it's impossible to ever happen again, but, I'm 48. I don't have to worry about certain things the way I did when I was younger. I worry about different things now. But a song isn't really going to matter to me as much because I'm worried about, say, paying the bills or fixing this or doing that. It's the emotional side of my life is a lot more settled now than it used to be. And my dog is making a lot of noise here in the doorway. So yeah, I think all those things kind of converge and affect the way you listen to music. I just like the way that I liked Jeff Party's video where he talks about that. I'll put a link to it in the doobly-doo down below. Check it out and see what you think. It's interesting. it makes it's a good conversation to have. It makes you think about, you know, why you're still collecting, what music still means to you, stuff like that. And I just had a couple thoughts on it, so that's why I just wanted to make this response video. So it's already 15 minutes. I'm going to cut this off here. Hopefully I explained myself well enough. I hope I did. So all that said, I'll see you guys in the spin zone soon. So take care, peace, and I'll talk to you soon.